Hi, and welcome to Griefclass. I do have several phone numbers and resources below. If you at all feel like you have lost hope and don't know how to go on, if you're having any thoughts of suicide, or if you just need someone to walk through this process with you, please see below. I have a lot of resources. And always remember, even if the resources aren't listed below, that in every community there are pastors, there are organizations, there are groups that will offer free counseling. And I do have the suicide hotline number below, but there are many hotlines that can help you through this grief process. I'm very sorry that for what you're going through, but I'm glad that you found my channel. On today's episode, I don't make episodes every day, but on today's video, I want to talk about a man named, well, I'm not going to talk too much about him, but some material by a man named Dr. Alan Wolfelt. And I have information below, links to some of his information, and I'll be talking a lot about him in future episodes. My husband has been familiar with Dr. Wolfelt's work for a very long time. My husband is a pastor, and so before we ever lost a child or ever felt like we needed this, my husband stumbled upon his material to help grieving people in our church. And then when our son passed away, my husband found a lot of help from his information. And I am just myself now becoming familiar, even after 3.5 years of going through grieving. I don't know why. There was just so much information out there, and I turned to more, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know why I didn't find him or really dig into his material up until now. But I'm really finding it helpful. So I wanted to start with what Dr. Wolfelt calls the Mourner's Bill of Rights. And this should be very straightforward for those of us grieving. This should be very simple. But I do want to warn you that when you assert these rights, or when you feel like, yes, these are my rights and I should have them, you need to just be prepared, because remember, I'm 3.5 years going on 4 years out since my son passed away from epilepsy. I just want to have you be prepared that people will be very patient with you at first, but then these rights come into play as time goes on. Now, my stage of grief currently, and I do feel like grief can come back, and he's talking about some of these things in just these Bill of Rights. That's why, it's so profound. I just want to read this to you. But I can tell you, even at my stage of grief, where 3.5 years have gone by, I've worked very hard. I have worked every single day since my son died to heal, to be productive, to help others, to not feel sorry for myself, and yet be patient with myself. I've tried hard, and I have been successful. I'm very proud of myself for finding that right balance of patience and grace for myself in this path that I've had to face, and at the same time being tough enough on myself that I was determined to heal. So I've been a very determined griever, if you want to call me that. I've been a very what is the word? A proactive. I've been very proactive. I have had counseling. I have forced myself to do things that I thought might help. But when I failed, if you want to even call it that, that's a horrible word, really. Let me say that differently. I guess failed in other people's eyes. I guess that's why I kind of was tempted to use that word. I'm sorry. I'm kind of digesting some of this material just as we speak. And I wanted to do that on purpose, because I don't apologize for that, because this is a lot to take in, and I just wanted to give you that upfront knowledge that there will be people in your life who are uncomfortable with your grief. That's where a lot of this mourner's bill of rights comes from, because other people may not feel the loss you have. Maybe it was your loved one and they're just a friend. Maybe it was your loved one and they're just a coworker. Maybe it was your divorce and your husband left you, or whatever the case is, and they are someone who kind of knows you, and either you inadvertently relied on them and asked them to kind of come into this fold and to help you, or they volunteered and then realized it might be too much for them. And I've talked about that briefly in some of my first videos about how we do need to let other people off the hook. However, I don't want to give you these bill of rights and then say, yes, these are your rights as someone who is grieving, and then not prepare you for what I know. And I wish I didn't know it. I have the most amazing family, the most amazing friends, and I have a church that I have been in the same church for 25 years. And I have all of that. I have not moved around a lot or anything like that. We've lived in the same house for 18 years, in the same town for going on 25. And so I had what I thought, and I guess what is, about as strong of a support system as you can possibly have. And yet I have had to, without knowing it, I guess, because he speaks it. He puts it into words that I have not been able to put into words. And that's what I love about this. But I have had to stand up for myself. Hopefully not as much outwardly, because of course my husband's going through it. He's very supportive. I've only had a couple of family members who even dared to kind of let me know that my grief, might have gone on too long for their comfort level. But I knew, thankfully, as a nurse, and just thankfully internally, I knew that I was not grieving inappropriately. Maybe they felt like, with what their life path has been, that it was, or that they would have done things differently. However, of course, none of these people have lost anyone, so that won't surprise you. It's like the people who don't have children who comment on how your children should behave. It's just that, and it's just normal for life. And what I want to emphasize before I read these is that as much grace as I've had on myself and my husband during our grief process, I have tried. Now, it's been hard for me because I obviously am not Jesus himself, who has grace with all people. I have struggled, but I have tried, whether in the moment or after the moment, to have grace for other people and understand that they got roped into this and kind of pulled along also, through really no fault of their own. And so I've tried to value their opinions and not speak up unless I really had to. There's one incident in my life where I had to really write someone a letter and call them on their lack of grace for me during my grief thing, during my grief path. And they really are not that accepting of it even to this day. I'm still in relationship with these people, but they still, I think, feel that my grief should not have been as outward as it was at an event. And it was an event where I missed my son, did not expect in any way, shape, or form to express my grief to anyone. I found it doesn't do any good, really, especially after 3 years, to express your grief to someone. Yes, people will crowd around you. They will give you sympathy, but sympathy has not, in the end, really done anything for me, and I certainly do not seek it out. I certainly do not find any benefit, in the attention. I have people I can go to for support. So if I break down in a public place or a public arena, I can tell you it is totally because I can't control it. And that's why I love some of the things he says. So I'm going to go ahead and read these. And I'm sorry that I might be going on and on, but I just recently found this, and I'm going to be really kind of reading and rereading this and thinking through making sure that I've had enough grace even for myself. Maybe I haven't even had enough. So he says, and this is from 2013, the link that I gave you below. I know he's written many, many books. He's one of the foremost experts on grief that I have heard of. He says, as a bereaved person, you have certain rights that others must not take away from you. I feel like I'm going to cry just reading this. It is, in fact, the very upholding of these rights that makes your healing possible. You will not heal. And this man, he's got his doctorate, he's a counselor, he's got all that. These are not just, things that he's just throwing out there. I think he's counseled many, many people going through grief. And okay, I'm going to read number 1. You have the right to experience your own unique grief. No one else will grieve in exactly the same way you do. Do not allow others to tell you what you should or should not be feeling. I don't know why this is so profound for me, because I might have needed this when my son first died, or I thought I did, but everyone gave it to me. See, I didn't need this when my son first died. Let me rephrase that. People gave it to me. They let me grieve. They let me cry in public places. They didn't say a word. They hugged me. Strangers hugged me. People wrote me letters who I've never met because I live in a small town, and they just heard from someone and they just wrote me a letter and told me how sorry they were, and cards came. And if maybe you're just going through that now, but the support was almost unbelievable when it happened. But these Bill of Rights, I can tell you after 3.5 years, you will need them. And it doesn't mean you have to vocalize them to others. Maybe you will. I've had to do that once, as I said. And I wish I would have just put this in an envelope, and that's all. I wish I wouldn't have wrote a letter. This would have been so useful. That's why I want you to see this link below. I wish I never would have had to come up with it on my own. I basically came up with it, only mine had some anger involved. I am going to be honest with you. Okay, let's go to number 1. You have the right to experience your own unique grief. Okay, doesn't matter how someone else did it. I don't think I need to say any more on that. Number 2, you have the right to talk about your grief. Part of the reason I started this YouTube channel, I'm going to be really honest with you, is because I needed to exert my right with this situation to say that as a nurse, as an educated nurse, as a pastor's wife who's seen people grieve for things that maybe I thought even at the time, okay, this divorce has gone on 5 years. Are you really still grieving over that? And I maybe in my heart had some judgment, but I knew better. I knew that it's okay to have, it's not okay to get stuck forever, at least not for that person, but it's not my business. You know what I'm saying? I'm there to help. So that's what I love about this, is a lot of it is us giving grace to ourselves. And then I know for a fact that he wants us to heal. He's not saying you stay and wallow in your sorrows. I know based on his other things that that's not what he's saying. But I do believe that without the grace that he is trying to give us with these statements, that you won't heal, because you'll be judging yourself the whole time that you're trying to do the work. And as I said, I think in this video, sometimes I get my videos mixed up, what I've expressed or not expressed, but and I think I lost my train of thought, but definitely we have to have grace with ourselves, and yes, force ourselves to heal also. Number 2, as I just said, you have the right to talk about your grief. Number 3, you have the right to feel a multitude of emotions: confusion, disorientation, fear, guilt, and even relief are just a few of the emotions you might feel as a part of your grief journey. Know that there is no such thing as a wrong emotion, accept all of your feelings, and find listeners who will do the same. I knew my son had epilepsy for 10 years, but it's still okay for me to be confused and to have been disoriented when he actually passed away. And I had more fear when he was still alive, knowing that he could fall or hurt himself. I had fear then. Relief is a hard one. My son wasn't sick as other people are, maybe with cancer, where you see them in acute pain at the very end and you're just really praying for them not to be in pain. But my son's life was not simple. It was very difficult most of the time. This was his 24/7 job, is not to have a seizure, to keep his meds, to do all of that. And because of my belief in heaven and where I believe my son is, there's a tiny tinge of relief for him. There's no relief for me. Yes, I had to worry a lot and spend a lot of money when he was alive, but the pain kind of overcomes any little bit of relief that I may feel that I don't have to do those things anymore. But it's okay. If you've been a caregiver for a loved one, and I know a couple of people I have in mind at my church who have lost spouses who were very, very sick at the end, and not because of who they were, but they were just very demanding at the end. Their pain, their sickness demanded 24/7 care. And I have a family member who just went through that too. And so relief should not feel sinful or wrong. And I love that about this. It's okay to have the emotions, to feel confused, to feel disoriented, to feel some fear and some guilt. You know, with my son, I wish I could have gotten him to the Mayo Clinic. You know, I got him to a level 4 epilepsy center in California. And I was starting to think, you know, they're saying he can't have the surgery. His epilepsy is too far gone. You know, it's too protracted throughout his brain to have the surgery. And I'm sorry for the graphicness of the video, but, you know, when you have epilepsy, sometimes you're fortunate they can do an operation and they can remove a tumor, or they can remove a part of your brain where the electrical parts aren't working right. And in my son's case, it was just too, you know, covering too many portions of his brain that he needed to attempt a surgery, or at least that's the you know. And I trust this epilepsy center. They were right. They did all the testing, but still, there's always that hope. You know, the Mayo Clinic, they're gonna find something. They're gonna be on the cutting edge, and I do have some guilt, I guess, that I just couldn't quite afford to get him there. I never did before he passed away. You have the right to be tolerant of your physical and emotional limits. Number 4. Your feelings of loss and sadness will probably leave you fatigued. Respect what your body and mind are telling you. Get daily rest. Eat balanced meals. And don't allow others to push you into doing things you don't feel ready to do. Wow. Now, in my case, I mostly pushed myself, so I'm probably the guilty party in that. I was pushing myself because I didn't want to experience all that pain. I wanted to push myself to a place to where at least I was functioning better so that I could, you know, not feel that acute pain. And of course, that doesn't work. You have to go through these stages. You have to feel all those emotions. So mostly this was me, but like I said, there's one example where someone was pushing me to get better quicker or to not cry in public, and this is very good. Number 5, and this is the main one for me. You have the right to experience grief bursts. Sometimes, out of nowhere, a powerful surge of grief may overcome you. This can be frightening, but it is normal and natural. Find someone who understands and will let you talk it out. And that is the most profound one for me, because I am 3.5 years out of my journey, and they're a lot more rare, you know, because first of all, I talk on here. I do a lot of reading. So I might have a grief burst like when I'm reading something at night. Like when I first read this, I just had an instant like, oh my goodness, a grief burst, if you want to call it that. But you know, it's okay to have those in public too. It will have consequences. I don't want to lie to you that if you do this in public, if you do have one that overcomes you, and a lot of times it's when you're having happy things. Like I actually have more, like you just saw me, like I'm a crier anyway. You just saw my emotions turn. That happens to me more when I'm happy and thinking of my son, like we're in a happy place. And it happens to me because I try to prepare. Like I don't go to every restaurant he used to love, and I don't do certain things, at least unless it's my husband and I. Like my husband and I will go to the gravesite and we'll go do things together, but we're prepared for each other's reaction. But we don't go with people we don't know very well to certain places or something. You know, if we know it's going to be a trigger place, but those triggers overcome you and you don't know they're coming. And you have the right to experience these bursts of grief. And even after 3.5 years, I do have the right to experience those. And I do feel like I've healed. I don't feel like they're very often, but I do have the right when they come over me, even after I still miss my child, needless to say. And, you know, the anniversary of his death is coming up in July. So that one I'm more prepared for. But, boy, these grief bursts really, I'm really relating to that term. I've never heard that term before, and that term really is helping me. You have the right to make use of ritual. And I'm sorry about my braces. Hopefully another week and I won't have these braces, but rituals. So the funeral ritual does more than acknowledge the death of someone loved. It helps provide you with the support of caring people. More importantly, the funeral is a way for you to mourn. Later, rituals such as lighting a candle for the person who died can also be healing touchstones. If others tell you the funeral or other healing rituals such as these are silly or unnecessary, don't listen, he says. Now, I was so fortunate that my son died before COVID and we were able to have a lot of rituals. I grieve over the people who had lost loved ones in the last 2.5 years who could not really have a true funeral, or people just wouldn't come. The people who would normally come and support you were afraid to come or couldn't come. That weighs on me, and it weighs on me, as I talked about in my last video, this thing in Ukraine where there's so many people dying that they can't have a proper funeral, and that's one of the things that weighs on me the most. It's the death of the people, yes, but it's also that there's no ritual, there's no way to say goodbye. Number 7, you have the right to embrace your spirituality. So if faith is a part of your life, express it in ways that seem appropriate to you. Allow yourself to be around people who understand and support your religious beliefs. If you feel angry at God, find someone to talk with who won't be critical of your feelings of hurt or abandonment. This is a big one too. And I've talked about this in other videos where I tried to go to different events, Christian events that had speakers who had had pain in their life. None of them had lost a child, but they had pain in their life. And I work full time. I don't put time into grieving all day, every day. So I set aside times, and, going to these religious retreats, if you want to call them that. I call them, like Christian women's groups or whatever. That's kind of my time to, not work, not have my phone around, get off of Facebook and just go for 2 days and have a getaway. And then a lot of these emotions do come out. But I felt at a few of these events that, they just didn't understand why I was so teary, but it's because I'd let my hair down and these emotions came out. But you have the right to embrace your spirituality. It's okay to ask God, what is going on? How did this happen? And it's okay to feel hurt and abandoned, even by God. It's okay to at least talk to him about that. You have the right to search for meaning. So you may find yourself asking, why did he or she die? Why this way? Why now? Some of your questions may have answers, some may not. And watch out for the cliched responses some people may give you. Comments like, it was God's will, or think of what you have to be thankful for, are not helpful, and you do not have to accept them. Yeah, I agree. I think that I try to be thankful for what I have. I am blessed to have 2 remaining children. I do try to thank God for a good husband and the 2 kids I have left at all times. But I do not want anyone else trying to tell me I should be thankful, or when I should be thankful, or how long it should take me to reach a place of thankfulness. I have reached a place where I am completely thankful for my son's life, no matter how short I feel it was. I'm very thankful for everything about him and the time I had, and I feel more blessed than I do robbed by his death. I feel blessed to have ever had him. My husband just did a funeral for a baby who only lived a couple months. He did that last Friday. So I feel more blessed than that couple because I had 23 years with my son. So I have found a way to feel blessed, but I don't want anyone else helping me with that. It's my path and I've got to do it. You have the right to treasure your memories. Memories are one of the best legacies that exist after the death of someone loved. You will always remember. Instead of ignoring your memories, find creative ways to embrace them. Definitely. I am getting strong enough now to pull out some pictures and to see some photos and to start uploading photos. And I'm going to do, I'm not really a scrapbooker, but I'm going to definitely put them into folders and make sure I have notes. And thankfully, we are very blessed to have videos of our son. He was a movie maker, and so we have movies of him, but I want to make sure those are preserved just to hear his voice. You know, we're blessed beyond many other people. We have him doing things, and I remember how he walked and talked and all of that. You have the right to move toward your grief and heal. So reconciling your grief will not happen quickly. Remember, grief is a process, not an event. Be patient and tolerant with yourself, and avoid people who are impatient and intolerant with you. Neither you nor those around you must forget that the death of someone loved changes your life forever. Ooh, wow. Boy. I hope that these are as profound to you as they are to me. I've put a link to print this off for yourself. I think I'm going to keep these in my Bible or hang them up so that when I am struggling, which you can tell, this is all it took to just make me an emotional person today when I read this. You do have some rights as a mourner. I want to say, as I leave you though, that I do want you to move toward healing, and that's what he says. It makes healing possible if you do these things, but no one else and no push from the outside helps you with your healing. All the pushing has to slowly come from internally, and no one should be allowed to push you from the outside, for the number one reason that it just doesn't work. If people push you before you're ready, it won't work. You have to do that work on your own. And I have pushed myself to be at the place I am where 99% of the time I'm very happy. I feel very blessed. I feel very thankful. But I can tell you that even after 3.5 years, I don't want to discourage anyone. That this process will last more than just a year or two. At least for me it did. I hope for you maybe not, but for me it did. But people may push you from the outside, but I want you to hold on to this Bill of Rights. So anyway, I hope this has helped you. I'm going to leave you with this, and please go print off a copy of this and try to digest that, and then comment below your thoughts on that. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.